Midtown was an industrial area, which there were neighborhoods on the edges of that. But so anyway, it's a little confusing. So when you're trying to plan out where you're going, be sure you don't have your agenda in both places and then realize you can't get from A to B.
True, particularly around 5 o'clock on a Thursday.
Yes, not a good time to try to go across the city in any direction.
No, not at all. Not at all. Tony, what is your up and coming hidden gem that you're going to share with us?
If anybody knows where the Value Village is on Moreland Avenue, you know where that is? Few people nodding their heads. It's East Atlanta, and there's a Value Village. There's a dollar store. There are a few other places, but it's a giant shopping center, an old-time shopping center. And it's recently been taken over by artists, and it's going to be a new artist development area where there'll be studios and galleries. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they had a drive-through art exhibition. And that's going to be the hip new thing for a while, I think, once the artists start moving in there. But they moved out a lot of the smaller retail establishments to allow artists to go in there. So keep a lookout for that.
Very neat.
And it's got a name like Atlanta Art District or something, but I don't remember the name of it. Look in the paper, look in Creative Loafing, maybe you can find it.
Nicole.
Yes, ma'am. Hidden gem. So I will probably say downtown Lawrenceville. I'm going to take it outside the perimeter again. Yes. But essentially, they're trying to revitalize the area. Before, it felt almost overdeveloped. Now I think they've taken some of the older buildings and they've put, great barbecue spots. And again, there's a town center. They're building new condominiums and single family homes. So it has the mixed use feel, this walkability factor that a lot of people are looking for. And if you want to feel like you're in the city, but not necessarily in downtown Atlanta with downtown Atlanta prices that come with that, you can go to these small little downtowns, and downtown will be one. So they're building it up greatly now. If you just ride through there, you'll see all the construction that's happening that they're doing to revitalize. And then also there's an art scene in downtown Lawrenceville. So the Aurora Theater is, I think they're temporarily closed now, but when they open back up, you can go get some barbecue, catch a show, and then hang out on the town lawn, downtown Lawrenceville.
We've been talking about all these places and these things, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, we can visit some of these places. We can't visit some of these places, and obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, and how is this pandemic gonna change Atlanta and how we're the things that we go to and the things that we do? Are we going to see a big change in all these places that we're going to, or are we still going to be able to go to Chateau Alon or the Beltline or these things? Are we going to see a change, or is this just a blip and we're going to move on? What do you guys think? Tony, I'll start with you.
Well, thanks. I think that we're seeing a tremendous change. I think that it's not going to end anytime soon. We have to think of new ways of doing things. For Creative Loafing, we've always been a guide to where to go and what to do and that sort of thing. And we can't, in good faith, tell people to go out and go to concerts and go to art galleries, and so it's kind of a tough thing right now, and of course now there aren't any concerts, but I remember in March when it first started hitting, people were going, oh, well, this is only going to be, for a couple of weeks. This isn't a big deal. And you do have to things like, Nicole was saying, go outside and go places that where you can social distance. But I mean, it's changing the way we do everything, how long that's going to last, I don't know. I know in Nashville, they're having concerts at drive-in theaters where the images are projected onto the screen at the drive-in theater, and you sit in your car and you listen to the music. Not my best way of seeing a band, of wanting to see some artist perform. And I can't imagine it's that good for the artist either, because they're playing in a sterile studio somewhere and not getting that interaction from the concert goers. But they're trying different things in different cities. Atlanta's done some drive-in events at the Starlight Drive-In. The Plaza Theater has done some outdoor drive-in events. And, the High Museum is reopening, and it's great it can reopen because it's a controlled access. So they can control how many people go in there. But a nightclub or a concert venue, you can't say, well, we're going to open, and instead of having the regular 1,000 people, we're only going to have 500 people, because they're not going to make the money that they would make if they were capacity. The other thing is that, they can pass it on to the artist and say, well, you've got to cut your guarantee. Well, how does an artist cut their guarantee when they have to pay the musicians, they have to pay their road crew, they have to pay for transport and transportation? So it's changing everything, when it comes to live music in particular. But I don't go out like I used to. I used to go out 2 or 3 times a week. I stay home, and I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying learning things, at home that I wouldn't have done otherwise. But it's not why I moved back to Atlanta. I moved back to Atlanta so that I can enjoy the city itself.
Well, and I think, and I saw Nicole post a question, are some of these changes positive? And maybe some of them are. What?
If I didn't see that question, but I think that is what's happening. What Nicole's asking about is there is a greater appreciation for community. I've met some neighbors that I've lived next to for a few years, and they're just down the street, and I've met people in my community. I live in Summer Hill, so I've met a lot of people that I wouldn't ordinarily know. I think the demonstrations that happened in the past 3 or 4 weeks have brought people together in a different way, but it's also a positive move, because I think the United States is on the cusp of a big change right now. And you got to keep that momentum going in order to facilitate that change. I don't know if anybody watched Rayshard Brooks's funeral, but Bernice King gave a great eulogy about how we're in need for change, and this is the time to do it. And I think that a lot of people may be sitting at home and thinking about community, but also thinking, what can I do to better this country and to better where I am? People aren't going to be going to the office as much anymore, I would think. A lot of people are talking now about, well, why do I need to pay rent on an office when we can all telecommute? So there are a lot of changes that are happening. It's a scary time as far as COVID-19, but it's also an exciting time because there's so much. As George Clinton might say, standing on the verge of getting it on. There's a lot that can be happening in a positive way, and I'm looking forward to that.
I'd agree with that. That I think we've had a moment to pause and think that we wouldn't normally have, and having that moment to pause and think has given us the opportunity to reevaluate things and perhaps see and prioritize things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And perhaps we can take that energy going forward and put that into positive changes for things that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
I would hope so. People say, when are we going to get back to normal? I don't want to get back to normal. Normal was no good. Normal has done a lot of damage. I think we need to move on. I don't know if any of you saw the pictures of the Himalayas and how you could see the Himalaya mountains from 20, 30 miles away that you couldn't see beforehand, that's great. Everybody's staying home, things are changing. I've been eating Georgia peaches all my life. This year, they taste better than they've ever tasted. And all I can figure is the water's cleaner, the air's cleaner, something's different because they taste really good for a change. Anyway, I'll let someone else talk. I'll shut up.
Jamie, how do you see positive and negative changes from COVID-19?
Sure. Yeah, I think Tony hit on so many great points. One of the unique things about my job is we're fundraisers, right? And so we're a resource for the community. And one of the things that Tony brought up was about the concert venues. And that's one of our wonderful benefits that we offer our donors. And we had to take a pause as well, not just with our messaging, but what we were providing for the community, and making sure that the resources were. So obviously concert tickets are one of those things that are changing, and because you can't just go to the venue. And we work with everyone from Wolf Creek to Chastain to the Fox Theater, which is an amazing establishment itself. And because they're in such close proximity to people when you're visiting, we've had to rethink our whole process. And so are these venues when we've talked to them. And I think that's a good thing, right? Because I think that you're going to offer access to people that may have before not, whether it be handicap issues or other things, because they're being mindful of everybody. And I think that's the diversity piece that we've been missing a little bit when it comes to just making sure every opportunity and experience, especially in Atlanta, because Atlanta is an experience city, is inclusive to everyone and to all. And, Tony was talking about, like, these concert venues are definitely changing the experiences. We're leaning more to virtual events just like this one. And I think it's actually adding to our productivity. Like, as far as for me, I've been working from home since March. Gone into the office a couple times, and while I'm on air, still I've learned to do things differently, actually probably more efficiency. My day is better. I can work out at 5:30 and I can get a full day. And so there are some really good things that are coming out of this from a personal standpoint that I can look at. I also just like the community effort. I just feel like even though my mask might be on, where is it at? My mask is on and you can't really see my smiling face, like there's a sense of respect. There's still some things in tension just because of all the social issues that are going on throughout, not just Atlanta, but throughout the country, that we're experiencing and trying to address as best as possible. But I think we're really leaning to our leaders to really, make these changes and step up, frankly, and so I'm excited to see what that looks like. When you were mentioning changes, what will stay and what will go, we don't know, right? Because we're getting new information every day. Shows like Frontline and PBS NewsHour that are air on our airs, and as well as other shows, are always giving more informative information about how to protect yourself, how to protect your kids. The big thing that we've been talking about in our news coverage, and then also experiences with our staff, is those that have kids. School's about to start up in another couple of weeks. And so the decision whether to send them or not has been a really big talk right now. So I'm interested to see how that transition is also going to happen, because we just got out of a school year, and my niece who went to Hampton High School, which is outside near Jonesboro area, her graduation, her prom was canceled. So you're seeing all of these things happen. So while there are some negative things that are happening, depending on who you talk to, I also think there's a lot of things that are happening that are finally being discussed. And I'm excited to see what happens, comes from it.
And Betsy, what would you add to that?
I think that the two main, the two sort of things coming to a head right now actually have played into each other a bit. I think with the pandemic, it was something that there's never been something that showed so clearly, at least in my lifetime, how we're all interrelated. What you do affects what I do affects you do, and we can only be safe if we watch out for each other. And it's across, every type of person. I mean, the homeless population in Atlanta actually had a very low rate of COVID, whereas, it was spreading through, you have sports stars getting it. So it was a very equalizing force. And then when we have, you know, all the protests and stuff, I think people were already starting to sort of be reflective, and then that hit at a moment where people were receptive to it, because, you know, people were thinking about sort of bigger picture things. And, you know, my hope is that it really does turn out to be a positive thing. I think that people, especially in Atlanta, we had become complacent, like, oh, we're the city that got it all right. Well, that was not true. It was so not true. You know, the work was not done. And I think that the leadership really, the longtime leadership, black and white, both bought into, oh, you know, we're the city too busy to hate, and this is the Atlanta way and everything. But the truth is that we were not done. And I think the generations that are coming up are like, no, you know, it's not over. We've got a lot of work left to do. And I think that it would have been hard for them to get their voices heard if everything had been going swimmingly like it was. And so I am hopeful that we're in a transformative time that really is closer to, you know, what King would have called the beloved community. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we're moving again. We had stalled out, and I think we're moving again.
Nicole?
Hey, so let me just say this, because I'm a perpetual optimist, all right? So I understand that we're all in a very stressful time, but when you have challenges, and speaking to a group of people in law and litigation, I'm sure you can identify with this. When you have a challenge before you, that's when your creativity comes out. That's when the innovation comes out. And that's what you find, that's where you find real leaders. So I think Atlanta, is it going to change Atlanta? Yes. And I think if we use this challenge, it'll change us for the better. I can even see that in my own workplace, watching my own leader, Kevin Riley, the editor of the AJC, just really, I mean, he's always been a good leader, but just getting an up close seat to see him, how he has required that we shift our mindset. He shifted his own mindset. And that makes me feel good, just simply because now we're all the media that's sitting here, that's talking to you. You know, we're held accountable to keep the community informed, and how we informed and what we choose to inform people about. So I think that this has made us better for you at the end of the day. And I think that every time we have a challenge, we can view it as something as how difficult it is, or we can also view it that it's difficult, but we're going to allow it to drive innovation, diversity, collaboration, and we're going to come out on the other side. I think Atlanta's going to do that no different than it's always done.
That's an interesting point. I mean, how have your newsrooms changed in light of the pandemic? Ages ago, I was a editor of my college newspaper, which is clearly very different from what y'all are doing. But I remember being up late at night and working on the editions together, and we were all together. And I assume y'all can't do that right now. So how are things changed in literally how you're doing your jobs and trying to collaborate and put together? I mean, y'all are having to put stuff together 24/7 and trying to get things together, and the information changes so quickly that you may think that you have something written or finished, and then it changes again. So how are y'all handling that?
I can speak to that. I can start the conversation. So let me just say this. I in graduate school, I studied organizational leadership and learning, right? And we had to constantly reflect on the thought process of how do we get the most out of our teams, right? And when we learned that, we also learned how to get the most out of a team that was geographically dispersed. And when a team is geographically dispersed, they get the most out of everything, not just from communication, but from working together on projects. The media is a paradigm for working together, everyone working together on one purpose and one project and one cause. So I think that the side effect that perhaps that our newsroom didn't expect, but is what inevitably happened, and this has even been proven in theory, is we worked together collaboratively on a project, and we had to work probably even more together than kind of leaning on the normal or the traditional. So I've found in our newsroom that, number one, we've learned and relearned that we are learners. So that's been great. So you can't be technology shy anymore, right? I'm not the millennial who knows about technology. We all know about Zoom now. So that's great. And then number two, it just allows us, we have to work together collaboratively. This is not a space where you can't do that anymore. So I think it's actually increased our communication. It's increased our teamwork and team effort. And I think that we actually feel probably closer as a group than we did before.
I'll
Would you
also add
say that,
something.
would you say the same is true, Tony?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't been in the office. We haven't met since March, but we have phone calls, we have Zoom meetings. And when we're putting the paper together, we do it all online, either sharing screens. And Nicole's right. You do, in a sense, you're working closer together than you were, because you were each in your own office or at your own desk doing your own thing. But now you're right in front of each other on your screen. So I think, we are learning to work together a little bit better, even though we're far apart. And, the first time we tried to put a paper together that way, I didn't enjoy it. But now that we've put 2 or 3 together, I love it. Because also, you can, like Jamie's saying, you can keep your schedule. You can work out or do whatever you need to do at a certain time. And so I like this.
Jamie, is it the same in your newsroom?
Well, it's kind of unique, right? Because we have a newsroom, which funds and does a lot of our, reporting. And then also for people like myself who are on air talent, on either TV or for radio, remote is my keyword right now, right? So I literally have production lights and cameras and Zooms and lavaliers and everything else all around my house. I've had my living room, which is now on television on ATL PBA, now being, my new set. And so you're learning to be very adaptable. I think for me as an on-air talent, it's allowed me to be more accountable and more transparent, right? With who I'm speaking to on air. It allows me to be even more authentic because I'm personally going through an experience with you and then talking to you. A lot of us are not in the newsroom every day. There are a good group of us that come in and out, and sparingly we see each other in passing, obviously. But it's made us very highly collaborative, like Tony and Nicole were saying. We're working together in different creative ways. But I think the best thing that came out of it is the challenge itself, right? So we're thinking of new ways to tell stories, to keep you all informed, to keep ourselves abreast of the new information, and then also just making us better writers and producers and journalists, to find the content that is worthy, because we now know people are on their phones constantly. They're on their laptops more than they've ever been before and seeking that new information. And so they're more self-reliant on us more than ever. And I think to us, it's like our responsibility. We got to put our capes on and make sure that we're doing our due, justice in that way.
Do you feel the same way, Betsy? I realize your publication is slightly different, in that it's more of a monthly publication, but do you feel the same way?
Well, yes. I mean, it's monthly, but since we're digital, we have, digital content. We were basically our newsroom now, which we were not, early in my career, it was just, monthly, this is great. But now, no, it's daily and hourly in our place too. I think all those things are true. The hard thing for us is that media is struggling with how to monetize and survive. And we had staff cuts. So a month into everybody working out of our house, we lost a big chunk of our staff. And so we're having to get really creative in getting everything done with fewer people.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard for everyone. I realize that we're getting real close to our time, or we're just over our time. And so I have one final wrap up question for y'all. How how do you see your responsibility to the Atlanta community for sharing information, particularly now that we're having to share it in a different way, and you're having to share so much by working remotely? Has that changed at all? Are you still able? Do you feel like you're still able to meet your responsibility?
I feel like I feel like our responsibility is greater than ever before, because people are not able to gather together. So I think that those of us in media can be sort of a gathering place for people. And we can talk to, 20 different people and crystallize what we've learned from them, and help connect people. And the magazine, the print version at least, is, because it is monthly, we have the luxury of being more reflective on whatever is in the news. We'll cover it on the website in quick hits, but then for the print, we get a chance to really do something a little more reflective and in depth. And what does this thing mean? Our cover story for August is about Ahmaud Arbery, which is not news anymore, but it's very moving. It's a very moving piece. And so that, I think, is very gratifying, being able to, I feel like what we write, in all of us in the media, it just matters even more than it has.
Jamie, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's hit it right on the. We have more of a responsibility more than ever. We're under a different magnifying glass than we've been before because of our responsibility, as they used to say, fake news, so we want to uphold that we're doing right by our communities and doing right by the people that trust us, that rely on us day in and day out to give them facts and unbiased information. I mean, that's literally the premise of what we stand for at WPBA. And as journalists and as producers and as writers and so forth, it's our responsibility more than ever to tell the truth in all the sides of the story. I have to really emphasize on that because there are so many different perspectives, especially when you're talking about unrest and you're talking about social issues. There's so many different perspectives. And I think it's important that we have these really big, deep, intimate conversations time and time again. It can't stop just because something has stopped happening this week. It could be something else next week. And so, like, all of the stories that we're hearing from the Rayshard Brooks to the Ahmaud Arbery case, we've got to continue to tell these stories, even when they're long gone and they're no longer happening. And so we need to find a way to keep those names relevant, and tell different stories in our community. And I think that's a big thing, speaking to the diversity that Atlanta offers. And I hope that, as my fellow colleagues are saying, that, that we continue to do that well.
Tony?
I'm in agreement with all of the above. I think, creative loafing, like the August issue that's out, some of the people at staff said, well, we need to do something on the protest. And we started talking about it. And I said, well, the protest happened, but where do we go from the protests? And so, we wrote a story, we have a writer that wrote a story on why stop with Confederate statues. Why not look at other statues in Atlanta that maybe should be brought down? We talked about the police in their use of force, and how that needs to change. So and then we asked 4 artists in Atlanta to illustrate their feelings on what, they were African-American artists, illustrate your feelings on what's happened in the past 6 weeks. And so we ran those pieces. You want to present different views and different attitudes, but also educate, or at least represent the community in a way that, you see fit. And I think we did a good job with this issue, with the stories being more impactful than they usually are, and the artwork that we included in it.
And finally, we'll close with you, Nicole. What do you believe on the subject?
So I mean, I think the question started where, um, like, are we more, is our role more important now? And I think that I personally believe it's the same. That's why we're written in the Constitution. And I think maybe people's awareness of the importance of the media has changed. So I think that our founding fathers, when they wrote that in the Constitution, a free press, a First Amendment, that's why they put it there. So maybe our awareness. And sometimes I think that also we can start to believe what we hear a lot, like Jamie said, fake news. But I don't think our responsibility, our importance, our accountability, it's no different than it ever was. I think maybe the public and even ourselves are starting to realize the importance of what we do. And can I just say one more thing? I saw a question from Natasha. She said, do you feel your teams are more tech savvy post pandemic? I would say, who's not more tech savvy after this pandemic? So.
Right.
Agreed. Well, let me thank you on behalf of everyone who attended, and particularly on behalf of the Atlanta Bar Association and the Membership Action Committee. We so appreciate you. And if you are not a member of the Atlanta Bar, we welcome you to join us and become a member of our association so that you can participate in more events like this. And we just so thank you, Betsy and Jamie and Tony and Nicole, for taking time this afternoon. And please pay attention to their particular publications and them, and reach out to them if you have questions for them. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. And we just thank you so much, and thank you all so much for attending this afternoon. And I hope everyone stays well and be well, and see you again soon when we can see each other in person. So thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.